You're listening to World Reading Club, presented by Hakeem Alibokis Alexander on Spreaker, Social Podcasting, and Wisdom, Social Audio Inc. Presented by Hakeem Alibokis Alexander for World Reading Club, in association with UniquilibriuM. This edition's reading focus comes to us from Islam, A Short History by Karen Armstrong, a national bestseller. A chronology. The Washington Post says, "It's a small gem bristling with insight." This is a revised and updated. This one in particular here comes to us from 2002, I believe. That's right. Islam, A Short History, chronology by Karen Armstrong. 610. The Prophet Muhammad receives the first revelations of the Quran in Mecca and, 2 years later, begins to preach. 616. Relations between the Meccan establishment and Muhammad's converts deteriorate. There is persecution, and Muhammad's position becomes increasingly untenable in Mecca. 620. Arabs from the settlement of Yathrib, later called Medina, make contact with Muhammad and invite him to lead their community. 622. The Prophet, together with some 70 Muslim families, make the hijrah, or migration, from Mecca to Medina, and the Meccan establishment vows revenge. The hijrah marks the beginning of the Muslim era. 624. Muslims inflict a dramatic defeat on Mecca at the Battle of Badr. 625. Muslims suffer a severe defeat at the hands of the Meccan army at the Battle of Uhud, outside Medina. The Jewish tribes of Kanyuka and Nadir are expelled from Medina for collaborating with Mecca. 627. Muslims soundly defeat the Meccan army at the Battle of the Trench. This is followed by the massacre of the men of the Jewish tribe of Qurayza, which had supported the Meccans against the Muslims. 628. Muhammad's daring peace initiative results in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah between Mecca and Medina. He is now seen as the most powerful man in Arabia and attracts many of the Arabian tribes into his confederacy. 630. The Meccans violate the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Muhammad marches on Mecca with a large army of Muslims and their tribal allies. Mecca recognizes its defeat and voluntarily opens the gates to Muhammad, who takes the city without bloodshed and without forcing anybody to convert to Islam. 632. Death of the Prophet Muhammad. Abu Bakr is elected his Khalifa representative. 632 to 34. The Caliphate of Abu Bakr and the wars of Ridda against tribes who succeed from the Confederacy. Abu Bakr manages to subdue the revolt and unite all the tribes of Arabia. 634 to 44. The Caliphate of Umar ibn al-Khattab. The Muslim armies invade Iraq, Syria, and Egypt. 638. The Muslims conquer Jerusalem, which becomes the third holiest city in the Islamic world after Mecca and Medina. 641. The Muslims control Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. They have defeated the Persian Empire and, when manpower is available, will occupy its territories. The garrison towns of Kufa, Basra, and Fustat are built to house the Muslim troops, who live separately from the subject population. 644. Caliph Umar is assassinated by a Persian prisoner of war. Uthman ibn Affan is elected the third caliph. 644 to 50. Muslims conquer Cyprus, Tripoli, in North Africa, and establish Muslim rule in Iran, Afghanistan, and Sindh. 656. Caliph Uthman is assassinated by malcontent Muslim soldiers, who acclaim Ali ibn Abi Talib as the new caliph, but not all accept Ali's rule. 656 to 60. The First Fitna. Civil war ensues. 656. The Battle of the Camel. Aisha, the Prophet's wife, Talha, and Zubair lead a rebellion against Ali for not avenging Uthman's murder. They are defeated by Ali's partisans. In Syria, the opposition is led by Uthman's kinsman, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. In Syria, the opposition is led by Uthman's kinsman, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. 657. An attempt is made to arbitrate between the two sides at Siffin. When the arbitration goes against Ali, Muawiyah deposes him and is proclaimed caliph in Jerusalem. The Kharijites secede from Ali's camp. 661. Ali is murdered by a Kharijite extremist. Ali's supporters acclaim his son Hassan as the next caliph, but Hassan comes to an agreement with Muawiyah and retires to Medina. 661 to 80. The Caliphate of Muawiyah I. He founds the Umayyad dynasty and moves his capital from Medina to Damascus. 669. The death of Hassan ibn Ali in Medina. 680. Yazid I becomes the second Umayyad caliph on the death of his father, Muawiyah. 680 to 92. The Second Fitna. Another civil war ensues. 680. The Muslims of Kufa, who call themselves the Shia-e-Ali, the partisans of Ali, acclaim Hussein, the second son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, as caliph. Hussein sets out from Medina to Kufa with a tiny army and is killed on the plain of Karbala by Yazid's troops. Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr revolts against Yazid in Arabia. 683. Death of Yazid I. Death of his infant son, Muawiyah II. Accession of Marwan I, the Umayyad claimant to the caliphate, who is supported by the Syrians. 684. Kharijite rebels or Kharijite rebels against the Umayyads, set up an independent state in Central Arabia. Kharijite rebels against the Umayyads set up an independent state in Central Arabia. Kharijite uprisings in Iraq and Iran. Shiite uprising in Kufa. 685 to 705. Caliphate of Abd al-Malik, who manages to restore Umayyad rule. 691. Umayyad forces defeat the Kharijite and Shiite rebels. The Dome of the Rock is completed in Jerusalem. 692. Umayyad forces defeat and kill Ibn al-Zubayr. As a result of the Fitna Wars, a religious movement develops in Basra, Medina, and Kufa. Various schools campaign for a more stringent application of the Qur'an in public and private life. 705 to 17. Caliphate of al-Walid. Muslim armies continue the conquest of North Africa and establish a kingdom in Spain. 717 to 20. Caliphate of Umar II, the first caliph to encourage conversion to Islam. He tries to implement some of the ideals of the religious movement. 720 to 24. Caliphate of Yazid II, a dissolute ruler. There is widespread Shiite and Kharijite discontent with Umayyad government. 724 to 43. Caliphate of Hisham I, a devout but more autocratic ruler, who also antagonizes the more pious Muslims. Abu Hanifa pioneers the study of fiqh. Muhammad ibn Ishaq writes the first major biography of the Prophet Muhammad. 743 to 44. The Abbasid faction begins to muster support against the Umayyads in Iran, fighting under the banner of the Shia or Shia. 743. Caliphate of Walid II. 744 to 49. Marwan II seizes the caliphate and tries to restore Umayyad supremacy against the insurgents. His Syrian forces suppress some of the Shiite revolts, but 749. The Abbasids conquer Kufa and overthrow the Umayyads. 750 to 54. Caliph Abu al-Abbas al-Safa, the first Abbasid caliph, massacres all the members of the Umayyad family, a sign of an absolute monarchy that is new to Islam. 755 to 75. Caliphate of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. He murders prominent Shiites. 756. Spain secedes from the Abbasid Caliphate, setting up an independent kingdom under the leadership of one of the Umayyad refugees. 762. The foundation of Baghdad, which becomes the new Abbasid capital. 765. The death of Jafar as-Sadiq, the sixth Imam of the Shia, who urges his Shiite disciples to withdraw on principle from politics. 769. Death of Abu Hanifa, the founder of the first of the great schools of Islamic law. 775 to 85. Caliphate of al-Mahdi. He encourages the development of fiqh, acknowledges the piety of the religious movement, which gradually learns to coexist with the absolutism of the Abbasid dynasty. 786 to 809. Caliphate of Harun al-Rashid. The zenith of Abbasid power. A great cultural renaissance in Baghdad and other cities of the empire. Besides patronizing scholarship, science, and the arts, the Caliph also encourages the study of fiqh and the anthologization of abadith, which will enable the formation of a coherent body of Islamic law, Sharia. 795. Death of Malik ibn Anas, founder of the Maliki school of jurisprudence. 801. Death of Rabi'a, the first great woman mystic. 809 to 13. Civil war between al-Mamun and al-Amin, the two sons of Harun al-Rashid. Al-Mamun defeats his brother. 813 to 33. Caliphate of al-Mamun. 814 to 15. A Shiite rebellion in Basra. A Kharijite revolt in Khorasan. An intellectual, a patron of arts and learning, the Caliph inclines towards the rationalistic theology of the Mu'tazila, who had hitherto been out of favor. The Caliph tries to reduce tension by wooing some of the rival religious groups. 817. Al-Mamun appoints Al-Rida, the 8th Shia Imam, as his successor. 818. Al-Rida dies, possibly murdered. A state-sponsored inquisition, Mina, tries to enforce Mu'tazila. A state-sponsored inquisition, Mina, tries to enforce Mu'tazila views over those of the more popular al-Hadith, who are imprisoned for their doctrines. 833. Death of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, a hero of the al-Hadith and founder of the Hanbali school of jurisprudence. 833 to 42. Caliphate of al-Mutasim. The Caliph creates his own personal corps of Turkish slave soldiers and moves his capital to Samarra. 842 to 47. Caliphate of al-Watiq. 847 to 61. Caliphate of al-Mutawakkil. 848. Ali al-Hadi, the 10th Shia Imam, is imprisoned in the Askari fortress in Samarra. 861 to 62. Caliphate of al-Muntasir. 862 to 66. Caliphate of al-Mustain. 866 to 69. Caliphate of al-Mutaz. 868. Death of the 10th Shia Imam. His son, Hassan al-Askari, continues to live as a prisoner in Samarra. 869 to 70. Caliphate of al-Mu'tadi. 870. Death of Yaqub ibn Ishaq al-Kindi, the first of the Muslim philosophers, or philosophers. 870 to 72. Caliphate of al-Mutamid, or Mutamid. 874. Hassan al-Askari, the 11th Shia Imam, dies in prison in Samarra. His son, Abu al-Qasim Muhammad, is said to have gone into hiding to save his life. He is known as the Hidden Imam. Death of Abu Yazid al-Bistami, one of the earliest of the drunken Sufi mystics. 892 to 902. Caliphate of al-Mutadid. 902 to 8. Caliphate of al-Muqtafi. 908 to 32. Caliphate of al-Muqtadir. 909. Shiite Fatimids seize power in Ifriqiya, Tunisia. 910. Death of Junaid of Baghdad, the first of the sober Sufis. 922. The execution for blasphemy of the drunken Sufi Hussein al-Mansur, known as al-Hallaj, the wool carder. The wool carder. 923. Death in Baghdad of the historian Abu Jafar al-Tabari. 932 to 34. Caliphate of al-Kahir. 934 to 40. Caliphate of al-Radi. 934. The occultation of the hidden Imam in a transcendent realm is announced. Occultation. 935. Death of the philosopher Hassan al-Ash'ari. From this point, the caliphs no longer wield temporal power, but retain merely a symbolic authority. Real power now resides with local rulers, who establish dynasties in various parts of the empire. Most of them acknowledge the suzerainty of the Abbasid caliphs. Many of these local rulers of the 10th century have Shiite leanings. Suzerainty? I don't know that word. Suzerainty. Let's take a look for a moment here what that means before we continue with the chronology. Alright, let's take a look here. How about we go to the Googles and find out what that is. I'm not familiar with that term, as I'm not familiar with many terms. These pronunciations, they got me. But I will continue to move on through. Let's take a look here. Alright, Google, what's suzerainty? Alright. Suzerainty, or suzerainty, is the rights and obligations of a person, state, or other polity who controls the foreign policy and relations of a tributary state, while allowing the tributary state to have internal autonomy. Okay. Alright, so it says, most of them acknowledge the suzerainty of the Abbasid caliphs. Many of these local rulers of the 10th century have Shiite leanings. Alright. Still not fully understood by me, but this is why I'm reading and learning through this chronology. Back to Islam, A Short History, Chronology by Karen Armstrong. You're listening to World Reading Club, presented by Hakeem Ali Bokis Alexander on Spreaker, Social Podcasting, and Wisdom, Social Audio Inc. Islam, A Short History, a chronology by Karen Armstrong. Continues. The Samanids, 874 to 999. A Sunni Iranian dynasty, the Samanids rule in Khurasan, Rai, Kirman, and Transoxania, with a capital at Bukhara. Samarkand is also an important cultural center of a Persian literary renaissance. In the 990s, the Samanids begin to lose power east of the Oxus to the Karakhanid Turks, and in the west to the Spanish kingdom of Al-Andalus. 912 to 61. Rule of Caliph Abd al-Rahman III, an absolute ruler. 969 to 1027. Cordova, a center of learning. 1010. Central power weakens and petty emirates establish local rule. 1064. Death of Ibn Hazm, poet, vizier, and theologian. 1085. Toledo falls to the Christian armies of the Reconquista, or Reconquista. The Hamdanids, 929 to 1003. Arab tribesmen, the Hamdanids, rule Aleppo and Mosul. Court patronage of scholars, historians, poets, and philosophers. 983. Death of Abu Nasr al-Farabi, philosopher and court musician at Aleppo. The Buyids, circa 930 to 1030. Twelver Shiites and mountain dwellers from Daylam in Iran, the Buyids, begin to seize power in western Iran during the 930s. 945. The Buyids seize power in Baghdad, South Iraq, and Oman. Baghdad begins to lose its prominence to Shiraz, which becomes a center of learning. 983. Buyid unit begins to disintegrate. They eventually succumb to Mahmud of Ghazna in Rai, 1030, and the Ghaznavids in the plateau areas of western Iran. The Ikshids, 935 to 69. Founded by the Turk Muhammad ibn Tugh, the Ikshids rule Egypt, Syria, and Hijaz. The Shiite Fatimids, or the Shiite Fatimids, 969 to 1171. Originally established in Tunisia in 909. The Fatimids rule North Africa, Egypt, and parts of Syria, establishing a rival caliphate. 983. The Fatimids move their capital to Cairo, which becomes a center of Shiite learning, and build the Madrusa of Al-Azhar there. 976 to 1118. The Ghaznavids, 999 to 1030. Mahmud of Ghazna establishes a permanent Muslim power in North India and seizes power from the Samanids in Iran. A brilliant court. 1037. Death in Hamadan of the great Philosophe Ibn Sina, Avicenna in the West. 990 to 1118. The Seljuk Empire. 990s. The Seljuk or Seljuk Turkish family from Central Asia convert to Islam. In the early 11th century, they enter Transoxania and Khwarezm with their cavalry of nomadic troops. 1030s. The Seljuks in Khorasan. 1040. They take western Iran from the Ghaznavids and enter Azerbaijan. 1055. Sultan Togrul Beg rules the Seljuk Empire from Baghdad as the lieutenant of the Abbasid caliphs. 1063 to 73. The rule of Sultan Alp Arslan. 1065 to 67. The Nizamiya Madrasa built in Baghdad. Madrasa, okay, let's see. The 1065 to 67. The Nizamiya Madrasa built in Baghdad. 1037 to 92. Malik Shah rules the empire, with Nizal Mulmuk as vizier. The Turkish troops enter Syria and Anatolia. 1071. Seljuk troops defeat the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert, establish themselves in Anatolia, reaching the Aegean Sea. 1080. Seljuks war with the Fatimids and local rulers in Syria. 1094. Byzantine Emperor Alexius Comnenus I asks Western Christendom for help against the Seljuk infiltration of his territory. 1095. Pope Urban II preaches the First Crusade. 1099. The Crusaders conquer Jerusalem. The Crusaders establish 4 Crusader states in Palestine, Anatolia, and Syria. 1090s. The Ismailis begin their revolt against Seljuk and Sunni hegemony. Local Turkish dynasties start to arise in various parts of the empire. 1111. Death in Baghdad of the theologian and legist Al-Ghazali. 1118. Seljuk domains break up into independent principalities. 1118 to 1258. Small dynasties now function independently, acknowledging the suzerainty of Abbasid Caliphate, but in practice bowing only to the superior power of a neighboring dynasty. 1127 to 73. The Zangid dynasty, founded by a Seljuk commander, begins to unite Syria in a riposte against the Crusaders. Notable examples are 1130 to 1269. The Almohads, a Sunni dynasty, attempt to reform North Africa and Spain according to the principles of Al-Ghazali. 1150 to 1220. The Khwarezmshahs from northwest Transoxania defeat the remaining small Seljuk dynasties in Iran. 1171 to 1250. The Ayyubid dynasty, founded by the Kurdish general Saladin, continues the Zangid campaign against the Crusaders, defeats the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt, and converts it to Sunni Islam. 1180 to 1225. Al-Nasir, Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, attempts to use the Islamic Futuwa guilds as a basis for more effective rule. 1187. Saladin defeats the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin and restores Jerusalem to Islam. 1191. The Sufi mystic and philosopher Yahya Surawardi dies, possibly executed by the Ayyubids for heresy in Aleppo. 1193. The Iranian Ghurid dynasty takes Delhi and establishes rule in India. 1198. Death in Cordova of the Falyasuf ibn Rushd, known in the West as Averroes. Is it Ibn Rushd? Known in the West as Averroes. 1199 to 1220. Ala al-Din Mahmud, Khwarezmshah, determines to create a great Iranian monarchy. 1205 to 87. A Turkish slave dynasty defeats the Ghuids in India and establishes the Sultanate of Delhi, ruling the whole of the Ganges Valley. But soon these smaller dynasties have to face the Mongol threat. 1220 to 31. The first great Mongol raids, with intense destruction of cities. 1224 to 1391. The Golden Horde Mongols rule the lands north of the Caspian and Black Seas and convert to Islam. 1225. The Almohads abandon Spain, where Muslim power is eventually reduced to the small kingdom of Granada. 1227. Death of the Mongol leader Genghis Khan. 1227 to 1358. The Chagatai Mongol Khans rule Transoxania and convert to Islam. 1228 to 1551. The Hafsid dynasty replaces the Almohads in Tunisia. 1240. Death of the Sufi philosopher Mu'id ad-Din ibn al-Arabi, or Arabi. 1250. The Mamluks, a slave corps, overthrow the Ayyubids and establish a ruling dynasty in Egypt and Syria. 1256 to 1335. The Mongol Il Khans rule the Mongol Il Khans rule Iraq and Iran and convert to Islam. 1258. They destroy Baghdad. 1260. The Mamluk Sultan Baibars defeats the Mongol Il Khans at the Battle of Ain Jalut and goes on to destroy many of the remaining strongholds on the Syrian coast. 1273. Death of Jalal al-Din Rumi, founder of the whirling dervishes in Anatolia. 1288. Uthman, a Ghazi on the Byzantine frontier, founds the Ottoman dynasty in Anatolia. 1326-59. Orkhan, Uthman's son, establishes an independent Ottoman state with its capital at Brusa and dominates the declining Byzantine Empire. 1328. Death of the reformer Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah in Damascus. 1334-53. Yusuf, king of Granada, builds the Alhambra, which is completed by his son. 1369-1405. Timur Lenk, Tamerlane, revives Chagatai, Mongol power in Samarkand, conquers much of the Middle East and Anatolia, and sacks Delhi. But his empire disintegrates after his death. 1389. The Ottomans subdue the Balkans by defeating the Serbians at Kosovo Field. They go on to extend their power in Anatolia, but are overthrown by Timur Lenk in 1402. 1403-21. After the death of Timur, Mehmed I revives the Ottoman state. 1406. Death of the philosopher and historian Ibn Khaldun. 1421-51. Murad I asserts Ottoman power against Hungary and the West. 1453. Mehmed II, the Conqueror, conquers Constantinople, henceforth known as Istanbul, and makes it the capital of the Ottoman Empire. 1492. The Muslim kingdom of Granada is conquered by the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. 1502-24. Ismail, head of the Safavid Sufi order, conquers Iran, where he establishes the Safavid Empire. Twelver Shi'ism is now the official religion of Iran, and Ismail's brutal attempts to suppress Sunni Islam in his domains inspire a persecution of Shiites in the Ottoman Empire. 1510. Ismail pushes the Sunni Uzbeks out of Khorasan and establishes Shiite rule there. 1513. Portuguese traders reach South China. 1514. Sultan Selim I defeats Shah Ismail's Safavid army at the Battle of Calderan, halting the Safavid westward advance into Ottoman territory. 1517. The Ottomans conquer Egypt and Syria from the Mamluks. 1520-66. Suleiman, known in the West as the Magnificent, expands the Ottoman Empire and develops its distinctive institutions. 1522. The Ottomans take Rhodes. Rhodes, Rhodes. 1524-76. Tahmasp II, the second Safavid Shah of Iran, strengthens Shiite dominance there. His court becomes a center of art, especially known for its painting. 1526. Babur establishes the Mughal Empire in India. 1529. The Ottomans besiege Vienna. 1542. The Portuguese established the first European commercial empire. 1543. The Ottomans subjugate Hungary. 1552 to 56. The Russians conquer the old Mongol Khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan on the river Volga. 1560 to 1605. Akbar is the emperor of Mughal India, which reaches the zenith of its power. Akbar fosters Hindu-Muslim cooperation and conquers territory in South India. He presides over a cultural renaissance. The Ottomans and Portuguese conduct a naval war in the Indian Ocean. 1570. The Ottomans take Cyprus. 1578. Death of the Ottoman court architect Sinan Pasha. 1580s. Portuguese weakened in India. 1588 to 1629. Shah Abbas I rules the Safavid Empire in Iran, building a magnificent court in Isfahan. Drives the Ottomans out of Azerbaijan in Iraq. Azerbaijan. 1590s. The Dutch begin to trade in India. 1601. The Dutch begin to seize Portuguese holdings. 1602. Death of the Sufi historian Abdul Fazi Alami. 1627 through 58. Shah Jahan rules the Mughal Empire, which reaches the height of its refinement. Builds the Taj Mahal. 1631. Death of the Shiite philosopher Mir Dimad in Ifshan. 1640. Death of the Iranian philosopher and mystic Mullah Sadra. 16 Definitely to be continued with 1656. You've been listening to World Reading Club, presented by Hakeem Ali Bokus Alexander on Spreaker, Social Podcasting, and Wisdom, Social Audio Inc. Presented for World Reading Club in association with UniquilibriuM. This edition's reading focus has come to us from Islam, A Short History by Karen Armstrong, the chronology. We left off with the most recent reading, 1640, Death of the Iranian philosopher and mystic Mullah Sadra. I will continue next with 1656, Ottoman viziers halt the decline of the Ottoman Empire. Islam, A Short History. Chronology by Karen Armstrong.